I just want to start by saying thank you to the PGA and to Chris. This is actually really meaningful that Chris has agreed to do this talk with me. He's a close friend, and when I think about entrepreneurs on the writing directing side, I certainly think of Chris and Phil as number one on my list. You know, they've talked about what their brand means, and their brand really means innovation. So I think it's a real treat to even have Chris talk to me today. And what I've said to Chris is that I hope this is not an interview of me. I hope it's a conversation between the two of us. So I just want to start with that, and then also thank you to Vance. Those of you that don't know, so the award was named after Vance, and when I first started my career in 2008, I was what they called an indoor cat, meaning I was a studio executive who had never produced anything before. And as a producer, you have to become an outdoor cat. And what does that mean, being an indoor cat? So when you're an executive at Warner Brothers, and it was fantastic, I don't know if they still do this, but they give you a car. And they give you healthcare. And suddenly when I became a producer, I had no car and I had no healthcare. And so Vance helped me at the time. I believe Chevrolet may still be a sponsor, but Vance helped me get a lease of a car. So he actually helped me get a car. And he also helped me get healthcare through the PGA. So as basic as it sounds, it's really important when you're starting your own company that you can drive and you can get your family taken care of. So anyway, thank you to Vance for that.
I thought we should start talking about Rideback and dig into what that is for people who don't know. He built an amazing campus, Rideback Ranch, that Phil and I are minority stakeholders in, and did have office space there until we signed some studio deals. And but explain what it is to the folks that don't know.
Yeah. So there's two parts of it. One, Rideback, my company, and then what Chris is referring to is Rideback Ranch, our campus. So I spent a lot of time in Montana in my off time, and in Montana I spent time with real life cowboys. And cowboys have a code in life, and they have a group of cowboys that they ride with. And there are times when you're riding as a cowboy when you fall off your horse. And the code is that if you fall off your horse, a fellow cowboy rides back and gets you back on the saddle, and you keep riding. So that's the ethos of our company and the community that we're building. And then we took it a step further with that cowboy code so that when you're successful, you ride back and you bring other people along. So Chris and Phil were, it's really special to have them on campus at the time before Sony made them a very lucrative deal. But really, Rideback Ranch is a community of creatives. Right now we have Margot Robbie's Lucky Chap, we have Warner Animation Group, we have Animal Logic, Australian animation company, we have Bound Entertainment, a Korean production company, and we have David Ayers, Cedar Park. We have Wandaland, Janelle Monáe's company. So it's a creative campus that reminds me of how I grew up at Warner Brothers, an old school studio campus. It was a reaction to, I feel like things have gotten a little corporate now with kind of the streamers entering the market, and that when I grew up, all the different producers and writers and directors would come in and out of their offices and socialize. And so Rideback Ranch is meant to promote what we call the Medici effect, where you have lots of interesting creative people in one space, and organic collaborations happen as a result of that. So we have all these different companies, and then on top of that, we have individual writers and directors that make their homes there, and then we run a lot of different programs. So we run an incubator with MRC, and another program called Rideback Campfire with CBS. So those are programs to help the next generation of talent, and also focused on more diversity and inclusion in our business.
Oh yeah, let's talk a little more about diversity and inclusion, which is a long overdue issue that has been finally starting to be tackled, but with middling success so far. What's your take on it, and what do you think will move the needle?
My take on it, we've made progress for sure. It's one of those things where when I came up, it wasn't called diversity and inclusion, it was just called good business. So obviously I'm a minority, and when I was hired in 1998 by Lorenzo de Bonaventura at Warner Brothers as an intern. And it was a very diverse group, but it was not called diversity and inclusion. Lorenzo just put together a team that was very diverse. One of which is Aditya Sood, who runs production for Lord Miller.
And is a childhood friend of mine.
Yes, and so Aditya and I were colleagues, but there were other diverse executives at the time, both not only racially, but also gender and also sexual orientation. And honestly, we made great movies at Warner Brothers.
Well, I mean, that's the big secret, I think, is that when you have the people making movies that reflect the audience that watches the movies, then they understand the audience better, and you end up making a better product that makes more money. So that's the thing that makes the most sense. Just do the thing that'll make you more money.
See, that's why you can see Chris is my friend. He's a filmmaker, but he's also a good businessman, too. So I think we made progress in that people are aware of the issue, executives are aware of the issue, people are hiring people that are diverse. The challenge I'm finding is that you have a select group of diverse filmmakers who get all the jobs, and they're double booked, triple booked. Chris and I know, because we try to hire them on our shows, and then you it's a steep cutoff after that. And it's not because the studios and streamers don't want to hire them, they just don't have the experience. Or they get hired and they're in over their heads. So part of what we're trying to do is help, how do you create the training, the 10,000 hours that the majority has?
Right, it's really a craft business, like cabinet making or anything. Like you have to, put in the hours and learn the craft. And if you're throwing somebody in at a level beyond, what they're ready for, then it'll fail, and you'll have people will get a bad taste in their mouth unfairly. But the apprenticeships and starting off on like smaller, lower risk indie projects and that sort of thing, where people can cut their teeth and make the mistakes that we all make. And the first thing I think is a really important part of it. You can't just like grab somebody and go like, here's a $200 million movie with a bunch of special effects and go figure out how to run that team. And so I think that like having people at every step of the process, bringing people in and promoting people and giving them their first shot in places where that it's safe and the pressure isn't on them, so that when the time comes, it feels like you have a larger pool of people to choose from. And I think we're very, very slowly working our way to getting there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad Chris used the words failure, because people look at Chris Miller and they go, oh, this guy never fails. And I learned early on, because when I started my company, I left Warner Brothers in 2008, and the first thing I said to my staff was, I just turned down a huge promotion at Warner Brothers, start my own company, we cannot fail. And from then on, we failed all the time. But why I bring up failure with Chris is that, unfortunately, oftentimes when you're in the minority and you're asked to represent your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, if you fail, you don't get a second shot. And what people don't know, they look at Lord Miller, and I thought it was hilarious. You guys have to listen to this podcast on Smartless, but they're called the Hall & Oates of filmmaking. But, go ahead.
And neither one of us has a mustache, but I would love to have their discography. They're great.
But that podcast, Chris and Phil talk about how they made it, and what people don't know is they had failed pilots, and they grinded away on TV shows and staff for 7+ years.
It's
right?
true.
Where people look at you because you look very young,
right,
and they think everything worked for you, but you guys had failure, and you learned from that failure.
Yeah, and we learned from mistakes, and we did things wrong, and we learned how to do them better, and we thankfully were given opportunities to keep making things. And I think that's you want to, like you say, you want to give people more than one shot in life.
Yeah.
And set people up for success.
So I started off my company saying, guys, we cannot fail, I have too much at stake. Then I meet these guys, and they come to me and they said, Phil said to me, fail fast, fail often, right? And with Chris and Phil, they want to fail and break things all the time. But what they said to me is, fail within the confines of we had a little compound in Santa Monica where we're making the Lego movie. Fail within this building, right? Let's fail as often as we can in this building, so when we go out in the world, it'll make it look easy. It'll be great. And so everyone says, the Lego movie was, so obvious that everyone should have made a movie like that. It wasn't obvious at all.
Very much not, and it was very bad for a long time before it got good.
Yeah, so Chris and Phil, and we'll talk a little bit about it, but the first animatic, we completely threw out the movie.
Yeah, it was, but page one, start over. It was a disaster.
So for those of you who don't do animation, you have to understand, they wrote a script that was greenlit. Everyone loved it. Myself, you guys, the studio, Lego. We had the whole movie drawn. We put it up.
Yeah, we make what's called an animatic, which is a storyboard, sort of a slideshow version of the movie, where you can sort of see a really crude version of the movie. And we watched it, and we were like, this is bad. It's had some funny things in it, but you don't care. You're not engaged with it as a movie. I think it's fundamentally broken. So we had to tear it apart, figure out the parts that we liked, the parts that we thought were working or were valuable, or what was the true north of what we were trying to say, and then completely remake it. We had an amazing team of people who all wanted to figure out a way to make it work, and were very smart. But it took years to get it to work.
So when we talk about this award and being entrepreneurial, I was freaking out. I think Chris and Phil hit it a little better than me.
If you weren't freaking out, that would be crazy because it was bad.
Yeah. So that's part of the process. I think what's important to take away is we've made many bad things, of which the world hasn't seen some of it so bad.
Yeah, and if the ability to fail in private is great, and with a group of people that trust you to pick you up, ride back, put you on that horse again, and let you try again. And that is the key, I think, to success, is in making it look easy.
Yeah, and you also talked about this on your podcast, which you guys have a team of people around you, and how much you take great ideas from a lot of different people. I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, I mean, this filmmaking is the most collaborative art form that there is in the world. These movies get made by hundreds of people, and they're most of them are creative artists who are making choices and decisions, and every member of the crew is a creative person, and to embrace that and look for ideas, and knowing that you get to don't have to use the ones that don't work or the ones that are bad, but if you use that resource, then and you can make your thing so much more rich and so much better and so much more full, and everybody wins, because everybody's out there wanting to make their thing great. They don't want to be like, oh, I'm working on this thing and it's stupid. They want to go and tell all their friends, like, oh, you got to see this thing that I'm working on. That's what they want, and so they want to do great stuff, and they may have a great idea if you're just willing to listen to them.
So anyway, going back to your diversity question, I think progress has been made. Look at you for an example with Spider-Verse. Behind the camera, in front of the camera, you have a diverse crew and cast. After Party, if you guys haven't watched the fantastic show, again, diverse cast, diverse crew. I don't think it was like that when I was coming up, but things have changed. So there has been progress made.
Right, people care now, and people are holding people's feet to the fire. But obviously, as you said, we still have a long way to go. And I think as long as we keep pushing, I think we're going to do a lot better. Let me ask you another question. I've got a bunch of these questions on my little iPad. Hold on one second. Let's talk about this award and entrepreneurship. What do you think it means to be an entrepreneur when you're a producer?
I think it means never taking no for an answer. And when they say no, figure out a side door to enter. And if the side door is closed, figure out the back door. Just figure out any single way to get through. And at a certain point, as Phil, your partner, says to me, Dan, at a certain point, if enough people tell you you're drunk, you're drunk. So also, there are plenty of bad ideas you have as a producer. But I'm going to circle back to Chris's opening and talking about the Lego movie. Chris is very polite, but I'll give you the further detail. And Chris may not have known all this, or maybe he's being polite. So the first Lego movie, we did all the animation. Despite all the failure, when we finally put it up for a test audience, real people, it tested very well. And the movie was working. And I got a call from the head of the studio, and I went in, and it's never good to get a call from the head of the studio to ask to be seen by yourself, because you feel like you're being called by the principal. But he said, Dan, I have good news for you. And I said, wow, what's the good news? And he said, you guys have made such a good movie, you don't need the live action anymore. So let's just make it an animated movie. And I'm like, what? The whole reason we made the movie was for the live action part. It was so personal to myself, Chris, and Phil. That was the reason we made the movie. No, we're going to save $6 million if you don't shoot the live action. And we just release it as is. And honestly, I was devastated. I left that office just devastated. Oh my gosh, I got Chris and Phil and the crew in Santa Monica. I'm in Burbank. This is not good news. So trying to figure out what to do. We finally... You probably remember this.
He goes, great news.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun. It's great news, right?
It's good news. We're taking something from your movie.
And Chris, you probably remember this. They halved our budget.
I know. I remember it. And we were panicking. I was saying it in a nice way up there on that podium.
So you're very... Unfortunately, this is being recorded. I'm sure I'm going to take a lot of heat for this. But so I, as a producer, then I go back and go, guys, this is what happened. Then I finally got the studio to say, okay, we'll do it, but we're going to give you half the budget. And then we had to be super entrepreneurial about it. And so that's when the idea came of, okay, we have a live action set. How do we raise, it's crazy, it's a big studio movie, but how do we raise money? Like suddenly like this live action.
Sale.
Yeah, basically it's like, okay, we treat it like an independent movie. And Chris, you probably remember, we have the schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the good news. Everybody was on board because we were all passionate about it, and everyone was on board to make it work. And we shot it like an indie movie.
You really did run
By hook or by crook, we
doing
made that
like
work.
miniature photography because it was from a Lego's point of view. So
And Chris's mom sent sets from his.
that's
from when he
right.
grew up.
From when I grew up, but we put on the set of the movie as part of a Lego
So that's
collection.
how indie it became. So people don't know this. So it looks like a big studio movie, and it is. But we had so anyway. That's an example of entrepreneurial. When you get no, you got to figure out another way.
Find a side door or a back door or a trap door
Trap
or a window. Let's talk about the movie industry for a little bit. Theatrical attendance is back. Top Gun broke records on Memorial Day, and right now some people are flocking to see dinosaurs destroying various world locations. Do we think that we're back, baby, or do we think that it's actually more complicated than that?
I think it's more complicated. I think we're back for certain films like Top Gun. I don't know how you feel, but I actually want to see it a second time. So certain films that are big events that you have to see on the big screen, like Jurassic, like Top Gun, I think will still justify a theatrical release. But I think there are going to be some films, unfortunately, like that middle tier, or even frankly for myself, and you have kids, I have kids, it's just easier to watch at home.
Right.
So I think I don't think it'll be the market won't be as robust as it was pre-COVID. I think it will be robust, but there's going to be a certain level of film that will be debuted on streaming that perhaps would have come out on theatrical before.
Right, and so we think you think it something that is a big spectacle or a big cultural event, an experience. The burden to be a theatrical experience where you have to like go pay for the babysitter, drive, buy the tickets, and do the whole night is a higher threshold than it was before COVID and before the rise of streamers.
Yes, it's a higher threshold, but I wouldn't limit it just to big budget. You know, you can have lower budget films. I think it's called Everything Everywhere. I get the title wrong.
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
The title wrong all
By
the time.
Daniels.
But that becomes an event, right?
Yes.
So it can be a lower budgeted movie, but if it's innovative enough, if it can break through, that becomes an event where I want to see that in the theater and not at home. So it doesn't relegate it just to big budget features, but it's really what you and Phil talk about all the time, which is how do you break through? What have you made before that? What have you made that you haven't seen before?
Right. When we were making Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Sony Animation had just had a movie that didn't work, that didn't make money. It was actually a wonderful film, but it didn't make money. So they hired NRG to do a big research and poll a bunch of people of what they wanted to see in movies, why certain movies worked, why other movies didn't work, and what came back after spending hundreds of thousands of dollars was uniqueness drives the marketplace. People want to see something that they haven't seen before, and we could have saved them the money if they could have paid us, and we could have told them that. But I do think that something like Everything Everywhere All at Once, that feels like something totally innovative and totally new that you need to see because it's not an experience that you've had 20 times before. You're like, oh, this seems like a good movie, but I know the beats of it, and it's just a standard movie. That seems like the type of thing that you might want to see at home on a streamer, going, oh, this feels comfortable, but something that feels bold and exciting and revolutionary is something that you would cross the difficulty threshold to go see. That's what you're basically saying?
Yeah, but I want to ask you, because I think I've been very busy during COVID. You and Phil have been very busy.
Yep.
And you guys have been busy not only on After Party, but also on theatrical films, right?
Yes.
So not just big event Spider-Verse, but also lower budget. I'm curious, what's your point of view on this question?
Yeah, the same thing. I think give people a reason to go to the theater, and I think there are types of movies that feel like this is something that I'll wait and see this when it comes to my house. I'm not going to drive there to see it. But I think that like the cultural aspect of it, if it becomes there's like a point when people get excited about something and it sort of snowballs on itself and becomes a cultural event, or it has to be something that you just has never been seen before, and people are like, what is this? And so some of the films that we're producing right now are things that are tonally unlike anything else. We're producing this movie called Cocaine Bear, which is sounds like an Oscar bait.
For kids?
Very much not for kids. It's like a gory comedy where based on a true story about a bear that came upon some bags of cocaine in the woods and went nuts. So yeah.
Based on a true story?
Based on a true story, for real. The bear is stuffed in a mall in like Chattahoochee, and it's called Pablo Escobar. But it is something. The tone of it is unlike anything else, and so the gamble there is that it's a fun comedy with a crazy bear in the middle of it. And it doesn't feel like anything else that's been out there before. And I think that's sort of the guiding principle for thinking, like, is this going to be a theatrical experience or not? And the other aspect of that is the word experience, where it's like, I think you go to the movie theater because you want to feel more than one thing. I think if you can laugh and cry, or be scared and surprised, or if you can do more than one emotion in the same movie, you leave the theater going like, wow, that was an experience I had. I felt a ride of emotions, and now I'm out of it, and now I have to tell everybody to go see it. And so I think that's the other part of it. And then, if all else fails, a big spectacle.
No, I mean, you touch on it. You talk about cultural moments. I think they can only really be created, in my opinion, theatrically, right? So there've been some great streaming movies, but they kind of come and go. And when you talk about crying and laughing at the same time, you and I experienced it at the Lego Movie, right? So we would go to the theater together, audiences watch it, and they would laugh like a classic Lord Miller movie. And like a classic Lord Miller movie, they always surprise you with the emotion. Then people would start crying. And I experienced that same thing when I went to watch Spider-Verse, right? It's harder to do when it's at home. Yes, you can do that at home, but it's just not the same communal experience that it is in the theater.
What's interesting to me is that in TV, it still is a cultural experience, and I think there's more time to get to know those characters and really like fall in love with them. But it's interesting to me that in the movie space still, for things that are 2 hours long, fewer of those in the streaming world have broken through culturally the way they have in theaters. And I wonder why it is that's still like there's still like a wall of cultural penetration that streamers have done great with the TV side, but for the feature side, less so.
I feel it's because people are watching it at different times. Like with Top Gun, a movie that works, everyone's going to see it at the same time. Everyone's going opening weekend or a couple weeks after opening weekend.
Right.
Whereas like a TV series like After Party, yes, you can watch it opening weekend, or you might wait for a couple episodes. It all depends on, every streamer has a different release pattern too, right? So it depends on if the streamer's releasing all at once or once a week or several batches. So I think that's part of the issue too, which is not everyone's watching it at the same time. Whereas TV, because you can watch it, it played sometimes over weeks.
Right, and I personally prefer the weekly release model, especially for something like the After Party, where it's a murder mystery and you want people on the same episode so that people can talk about it and make theories as to who done it. That said, a large part of the younger population waited till the last episode dropped to watch the show because they didn't want to have to wait. Because I need that instant gratification.
Can I ask, because I actually don't know the inside baseball of After Party. Did you have to fight for that release pattern?
No, that was, Apple does that regularly. Well, they'll release like the first 3 and then do it weekly. But that was part of the reason, one of the reasons why we made it there was because we believed that the weekly release model was the right thing for that show.
Got it.
Yeah. I think you're right about the fact that it going over multiple weeks is a big part of it. I also think part of it is that they don't spend the money promoting the movies the same way on streamers because they let the algorithms and the screen push it to you. So you're not seeing it on the Happy Meals and the billboards and the omnipresent bags of Ruffles that are telling you that there's dinosaurs around. And so I think maybe that's also part of why it doesn't feel like it's a cultural moment. But that said, some of these smaller movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once are also not on bags of Ruffles, but they are just so unique and interesting that they sort of self-generate interest.
So Chris, while we're talking, as you're talking about After Party, made me think, because I get the question a lot, between After Party and being entrepreneurial, how can we turn a feature that's not getting made into a TV series? And I wanted to ask, because that's a case of you being entrepreneur. I know for years you wanted to make that movie.
Mm-hmm.
How do you turn a movie into a TV series? How hard is it, and how hard is it to get a streamer to see what you originally created as a feature should be a series?
Well, what was interesting about that was that I'd sold it to TriStar as a movie, and the concept of it, if you don't know what it is, it's a murder mystery comedy that's sort of like a Rashomon thing where each suspect tells their version of the night in a different genre of film style that matches their personality. So one person's story is a rom-com, one is action, one's a musical, one's animated, that sort of thing. And then the problem with the script was that it was a little episodic by nature. And you're also trying to jam everybody's point of view into sort of like a little 7-minute chunk because they can only fit within the confines of a movie. But for that show, the idea of going, everybody gets their own episode, then you can really dig in and get to know them as a person and really have some fun with it and sort of learn to empathize with them. And you get to have 8 different main characters.
So your idea to convert it to TV series?
Yeah, it was when Tom Rothman would periodically call me and go, "When are you gonna make that After Party movie?" And I'd say like, "We're busy, but I want to come back to it." And then finally got a moment and dusted off the script, and I was like, "Oh, this needs work." But then when I was reading it, I thought, I think it'll be better as a series. So in that case, it wasn't that hard. But I do think that.
So then what do you do then? You have a feature script. Did you write the pilot, the first episode?
I broke it out into an outline for an 8-episode structure, and then pitched that, and had basically the outline for the whole season based on the original script. But then we hired a writer's room and made it much better and more interesting than the original script. But I think, when we're trying to think of is something a movie or a TV show, one of the things that we think about is like, does it have a beginning, middle, and end? And if it has, the ending is a big part of the concept, then it feels like a movie. And if it's something where the ending is less part of the concept, then it sort of feels more like a TV series. Or if there's too much to do in a movie to fit in a 2-hour thing, like Game of Thrones, how complicated it was. The movie version of Game of Thrones would be probably not as interesting because you'd have to simplify it so much to fit into a 2-hour movie. And there's a lot of times when at our company, something will start as a TV series, but then sort of become a movie, or start as a movie and then become a TV series. And if you work on it enough, it'll sort of tell you what it wants to be. How's that been for your experience?
It's challenging because it's a great concept, but you have to get your film group to work with your TV group.
Yes.
And I've talked to so many producers, and it's just really hard to get that to happen. It's not that the people have ill will, but just people are so heads down trying to get their movie or TV show to work that they don't think of it the other format very much.
Right, and you want people who are passionate and excited about these projects and like have a sense of ownership. And so it's kind of hard to be like, I love this thing, but I think it might be better if you raised it.
Yes.
And so, and you don't want people who are like, here's a widget, why don't you take it? Because then if it's something that nobody cares about, even the people making it, then nobody's going to care about it to watch it.
Yeah, so we've done it recently. They haven't come out yet, but usually, Chris, like you hit a wall, like let's say from feature to TV, you hit a wall in the feature, you can't get it made for some reason, and then that's when you can think entrepreneurially, okay.
What if it was a limited series, or what if it was a series? And has the rise of streaming and the way things have changed since COVID changed the way that you are thinking about projects and producing?
Yeah, I mean, we have, I would say, a bifurcated business. What's great about streaming is that so far you're allowed to make more targeted movies as well. So it's a great opportunity for us to grow the next generation of filmmakers and directors and writers. So I think that's a real opportunity. So there are only so many Aladdins and Haunted Mansions out there, and so because streaming just has more volume, there are many more movies being made, allows us to break the next generation of writer and writer-director. I think it's a big part of it. And the other part of it is, I think streamer has been very open to, we're talking about diversity and inclusion, again, a very targeted audience. It doesn't have to make $100 million opening weekend.
And yet, Fast and Furious and many, many other movies that have diverse casts are the movies that are the most successful financially. So it can.
That's right.
Let's talk a bit about the cost plus model that has been taking some fire recently, where everybody gets a premium up front on streamers. Nobody except for the distributor participates on future profits forever. Recently, there was an article where they said we were living in a golden age of content production and the dark age of creative profit sharing. And what's your opinion about that, Dan?
So this has become very serious conversation all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Because I think this is actually one of the major issues for us as a guild. I think number one is, Susan and I were talking about this, number one is healthcare, providing healthcare for members, and two, it's really back end, how do you reward people in success? And both Chris and I have, frankly, we've benefited from that, and we bet on ourselves, and in success, it's paid off for us. And now that's been taken away, especially the past 2 years, it's really accelerated. So one of the speech you're referring to is by Jeff Sagansky, who was one of my mentors, and we actually just talked this past week. And then John Wells, you guys probably followed, also had a speech about this. I think it's a major issue, and it's not an easy solution. A lot of my time right now, talking about being entrepreneurial, is figuring out, okay, how do we break this? There are different ways to do it. It's not easy. You have some people who've done it by starting independent TV studios, and some people who've done it. You look at the Formula One movie and Brad Pitt and Joe Kosinski and how they sold that movie in a very innovative way. So I think ultimately it comes down to one, you just have to have the material, whether it's the package or the IP, that allows you to break through with the buyers with a more innovative back-end model. Or number two, we all have to get together. And when I say we all, meaning people in this room, the Producers Guild, the Writers Guild, the Directors Guild, they don't have the jurisdiction, but they have the members who will be willing to fight back. We all have to unite together. The agents are going to be a huge part of this and pushing back. But frankly, I just think it has to change. It won't change quickly. They're not going to be happy about it. But to really, I believe, to make the best content, you have to reward people in success.
Yeah, and you've got a situation where actors forever have been living off of the residuals for their movies and TV shows, and now these things only exist on one place forever, and they're not being spread around. It feels like the lack of transparency as to what even is a success is a real problem. And how do we get the companies to keep it out of being a black box? How do we do that?
Well, that'll change if Netflix starts having ads. I think that'll accelerate things, because if you are having ads, you have to sell those ads, and the buyers for those ads will want to know who's watching the show and how many people are watching it. So maybe I'm being positive, but I'm hoping as the business moves more towards, some parts of the business move towards an ad-based business, that there'll be more transparency that there was before.
So TV is turning back into TV, is what you're saying?
It is. My theory is that we may see deficit financing again. We may, I don't know about you guys. I can only have so many subscription services that.
That's for sure.
It's back to the old. What's old is new again.
Yeah. Are we supposed to take questions from the audience, or is that not true? I can't remember. Does somebody? I wish somebody should have told me what I'm doing up here. Thank you very much. You're doing a great job too, and I like your whole ensemble. I tell you what.
But let me just go back to
yes.
What did you? I'm sure you followed it too. What did you think when that statement was made?
Sagansky's?
Yeah.
I agree. I agree with him. I don't think it's this sort of pay everybody like they hit a single, or like, and then own everything forever model. It seems backwards to me. I think that when you make something that becomes a giant mega hit, you want everybody to reap the rewards for that, but it's hard to know what is a mega hit when they won't tell you what's a mega hit.
Right.
You have to get a sense, but then they'll tell you, oh, this was the most watched thing we've ever had.
Can I ask you, I don't know how public you
Yes.
can be, but how much, like when you make your shows, how much do they tell you about who's watching, how many people are watching? Do they tell you anything?
They're always very cagey about it. And they're always like, this was great with this audience, and this was a huge thing, and this was good for us, but we're not going to give you any real specifics.
So the only way you know you made something that people are watching is when they pick up your show for season 2.
Right. Yeah. Whether they picked up the after party, I guess they did all right, and then like when we made Mitchell's versus the Machines for Netflix, they seemed really happy when they would talk about how it was doing, and I've been on those calls where they're less happy, so we're like they seem to be like, Roman candles or whatever, so it must be doing well, but I have no idea what the actual numbers are. We're like, well, how does this compare to this other movie? They're like, oh, we don't give that information. So I would love to have way more transparency in that front.
I just think it's helpful for us as filmmakers, right? I remember with the
Absolutely.
Lego movie, we knew who was watching the movie.
Yeah.
Boys, girls, age, demo. I mean, it's just really helpful for filmmakers, especially if you're going to make a sequel, if you're going to make season 2. I would just think that the buyers would want to share that information.
Yeah, and they would tell us demographics as much as they know them, because a lot of these, the streamers it's not a Nielsen box. They're not asking you your age and your gender and your ethnicity or anything. They're just sort of like a person in Des Moines liked in this small town right here, liked it. That's all they know, and so they don't even know some of that stuff.
I think they want to open it up to questions.
All right. Look, I see there's like a line. Look at this. All right. Let's begin.
Take the mask down and keep it up. Yeah, keep it up. All right. Hey, guys. Thanks for the talk. My question was kind of in reference to you talking about the Lego movie and how you created an animatic for it, and you were able to see what didn't work. And I'm sure the same was for Spider-Verse. And it's kind of in the realm of what you were saying about things transitioning to remote now. So I'm sure Spider-Verse 2, like, how does the collaborative approach to, say, an animatic or a storyboard work when everyone's remote versus in person? Is there a difference to it or not?
It's a good question.
Yeah, it's much harder doing it remotely, and we're in the weeds right now on the Spider-Verse sequel, and we found we get way more done if we go in person, and so we started a thing where we test 3 times a week, and we go into the edit semi-regularly now, and we have more of the key crew members are working on campus again, although some because they are married to an immunocompromised person or whatever are still working from home, and that's fine, and you can get stuff done, edit sessions remotely on, via Clearview or the other apps that are there, but there's something about being in person where you can go like, how do we solve this? And you can just maybe like get a cup of coffee and talk about a problem that it just isn't the same when you're in a Zoom session and everyone's sort of semi-checked out and also like checking their email and doing other things at the same time. So we were stalling a little bit and like spinning our wheels on Spider-Verse recently. So we just were like, we got to go in person, now that we're all vaxxed and everything. And it has been a lot better.
Thank you.
Just knowing their process, having been in editing rooms with Chris and Phil, I mean, we're walking around, we're looking over each other's shoulders. It's very interactive. We're all staring. It's very interactive.
Yeah, we're all looking at how can we make this better. That's one of the great things about animation is that it's very iterative as a process. You get to look at it, and before the cement is dry, you can really make big changes. Whereas like in live action, you can obviously edit all the footage that you've got, but the footage you've got is basically the footage that you've got. And so, we take advantage of that probably too much.
We've got some questions on that.
Over here, well, look at this. My goodness.
Hey, thank you so much. It's really obvious from your work, but also from this conversation, that you care a lot about, family and creativity of like children and healthcare, and your own well-being. And so I was wondering, how have you found balance, or do you have any rules for, being able to be a really entrepreneurial producer, busy, and also saving space for your family and for your own well-being?
That's a great question. Why don't you start, Dan?
Okay. Well, for me, I think you're probably the same way. I actually have a distinct line between work and personal. I've had some people, without getting too dark, but Tony Hsieh from Zappos was someone that I knew well. He spent his summers in Montana. And one day we're having dinner and he said to me, Dan, you run your business completely wrong. And I said, what do you mean, Tony? He goes, you have distinct work and play. And I noticed, look at me, and we're all at a barbecue together. He said, look at me, all my employees are here on our vacation. We work together, we vacation together. There's no line between work and play. And you, Dan, are different. You don't play with your employees after work. Everyone goes home and does their own thing. And I noticed when you socialize, you don't socialize with industry people. And that's just a choice I made. There's no right or wrong. Everyone's personality is different. But when I was coming, my wife and I decided we're going to have a distinct line between work and play. Yes, we have some friends that cross the line, that we socialize with on weekends, that are in the industry, but we really try not to talk about work. And so it really gives, at least for me, some clarity on, frankly, life and just thinking about other things. And oftentimes when you think about other things outside of work, then it does influence your work as well. So I think for me, that's the most important thing. I've been very clear about a segregation between work and personal.
That's smart. Maybe I should start to do that.
No, but it's true, because I noticed you and Phil, as close as you are, you guys you're not 24. So people think that you're partying on weekends together.
Right, no. Yeah, he lives up in Malibu, so it's too far for me to get up there. But yeah, no, I think what I try to do is make distinct moments to be spending that are not work, that are family-based, or that are, social, that I carve them out as specific times, because there's a sort of a seep that you can just fill any time with responding to emails and dealing with this one thing because you're behind on it, and answering all these texts and being on calls and working into the night. And so I try to drive my kids to school in the morning, and I read to them at night, even though they're way too old to be read to. And things like that. And then on the weekends, I pick blocks, because otherwise it'll just sort of seep away, and I won't be engaged, and I won't be present. So I have to sort of force myself to separate work and sort of put the phone down, even if there's a fire, because there's always a fire. And it's been hard, but it's been very rewarding to do that.
Thank you.
So I don't want you to think that Chris and I have figured this out, because I think it's a daily struggle, but I think these are the goals that we strive for.
It's true.
Hi, my name is Tucson Brown. I'm a Chapman student, and first off, thank you guys for coming to talk to us here today. And I just wanted to ask about, because Mr. Lin, you talked about your Incubator Program. Where would one apply to that, and what's that process like? And could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we have two programs. One is called the Rideback TV Incubator, and one is called Rideback Campfire. And they're two different programs. One is for streaming cable, one is for broadcast TV. And they're not for introductory writers. We feel like there's plenty of diversity programs that are for the first-time writer, getting you into the business. The programs that we have are for writers who have been trained, have been staffed on shows, but never given a chance to create in their own voice. They've been taught to mimic somebody else's voice. And so what we do with our incubators is teach you how do you write in your own voice. And it sounds obvious, but it's not. Oftentimes people staffed on shows for so long that they've forgotten their own voice. So that's what we do with the incubators, that they've staffed on shows before, but they get a chance to create their own show, but not only create their own show, they're mentored by big writers, big-time showrunners who act as non-writing producers. So that's something new that we do. And then on top of that, we create a writer's room from the very beginning. And so oftentimes, like with Chris's shows, the writer's room is created when your show is picked up. We create it from the beginning so that you get the training about how do you run the room, how do you get feedback from others before your show is actually picked up.
Oh, wow.
Great idea, Dan.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. My question has to do with high concept producing. I know for you specifically, Chris, that you've done both, live action Star Wars with a big budget and also animation for Marvel with a big budget. What are some of the main, aspects that you focus on when, again, studios trusting you with, X amount of dollars and you want to use that and help the creators really create something special?
I think we try not to get overwhelmed with how big the project is. You don't want to just eat the elephant in one bite. You're going to start with the tail and nibble away. Why you would eat an elephant, I don't know.
I was going to say, that does not sound delicious,
This is a
Chris.
terrible metaphor. I'm going to try something else, guys.
It's because he
yeah.
used the word Star Wars that he threw you off.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are the words not to be said with
That's
Chris.
all right. When you're making something, the same principles that we were talking about earlier, where you want to do something new and interesting and something that has something to say. You're working on this really hard for a really long time. These movies take years to make, and you have to personally be excited to make it. Because if you're not excited, no one else will be excited. And so you have to find out what it is that you want to say and what it is that gets you up in the morning when you have to get up at 4 a.m. to get onto set, or when you have to answer a call at 11 p.m. because something has gone wrong. And because you are really passionate about the thing that you want, the story that you want to tell, or the theme that you want to say, or a new way of visualizing something, or anything, or all of those things. And the more that you can really have a fire in your heart about it, the more you can get it made.
Just to give you a visual of what it's like when you work with these guys, I mean, they truly have a fire in their heart. Whereas as a producer, and I've produced many movies with them now, I have to pull the movie away from me. The studio's calling saying, Dan, you have to deliver the movie. And my job is to buy them more time, because they always they're like, no, one more thing, Dan, no, one more, let's get the iPhone out, let's record one more thing, or let's just change this. That's how much they care about movies, and that's what I love working with them. But that's your job as a producer then, is like, okay, then how do I buy time that you believe them, that they truly can improve the movie in what little time we have left, or what time we don't have left. Mm-hmm. But that just gives you a sense of how much they care about movies, and I hope the filmmakers that you work with care as much as well.
And I think that you can tell as an audience member if it feels like a lazy job that people were just sort of doing the first idea, and if it's something that people really put a lot of love and attention and care and specificity into. And when you watch something, or at least when I watch something that feels like it was made with a lot of love and care, then you really appreciate it, and you're like, wow, look what they did just for me. Like Everything Everywhere All at Once. You're like, those Daniels, they really went the extra mile, even for single frames. They wanted to do something new.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The detail, right? Looking at, if you watch a movie, at least for me, I want to watch a good movie twice. And first time you can enjoy the movie. Second time you can kind of watch the layers of a movie. So whether it's Lego Movie, whether it's Spider-Verse, if you watch it a second time, you pick up things that you didn't pick up the first time. I think that's the testament of a filmmaker who really cares.
Thank you very much.
My turn, okay. When you first started your company, what kind of values and goals did you have in place, and how did those evolve to now?
Yeah, my manager, Mikkel Bonnesen, is in the audience, and I cite him because we spent a lot of time, really, he asked me the same question that you did, and I was an executive becoming a producer, and producers, as you know, are naturally, you have to be entrepreneurial. And he asked me, what kinds of movies do you want to make? And I wasn't very specific with him. And so we spent a lot of time looking at the movies that I loved and what are the themes that I cared about. And ultimately, we came up with our own brand filter. And it's not for everyone, but for us, we have our internal brand filter. And we're not overt about it when we work with filmmakers. But if you look at the movies, you can tell, right? So people ask me, how do you produce the Lego movie and produce It and produce The Two Popes? Those are three very different movies with very different themes. And so for us, we determined, Mikkel and I, which is Hero has a clear call to, I wanted to make hero stories. So Hero has a clear call to action, so a riff off of Joseph Campbell. That hero enters an exciting new world, and then there's a clear aspirational theme. So you can apply that to the Lego movie, you can apply that to It, you can apply that to The Two Popes. For us, that's what it was. Everyone has a different filter. You know, my TV group, their filter is head, heart, and guts. So we went through a similar process with them. But I think you really need to spend time, whether it's film or TV, what's the content that you love, and what is organic to that content? What are the central themes of that content?
Awesome, thank you. And then what kind of corporate goals? Like, how did you see the company moving forward when you were first building it?
I guess for me, I wouldn't think that big just yet, because to be honest, we never thought, my company started as Lin Pictures, it became Rideback. I never thought, we did dream the dream, Mikkel and I, about creating this campus. I never thought it would happen. So I would say, yes, have the bigger dream. Our bigger dream was how do you create Pixar meets Castle Rock for this day and age? And so we're hopefully doing that now. But I would say, dream the big dream, but you got to focus on putting 1 foot forward at a time. So you have to make the hit shows, the hit movies to make it work. So it's kind of like bifurcated, figure out what your dream is, the ultimate goal, if you could have anything in this business, but at the same time, don't forget, you have to make great content. You're all about your last movie or TV show, as Chris and I know very well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys so much for taking the time. First and foremost, my name's Audrey. I'm part of the PGA Create Fellowship Program, the Scripted Cycle. I have this one question. I love hearing people reflect back on their career. So when you guys think back to when you do IP and getting IP, what is one lesson that you've learned that you still hold on to till today when it comes to acquiring or finding the right IP for you to create whatever projects?
I think that for Phil and I, when we're looking at IP, and we've done a lot of things with IP, as has Dan, we like to, if it's something that we love, when we made the Lego movie, it was because we love what Lego is as a tool for creativity that uses your left brain and your right brain. There's engineering and just wild creativity that is part of it. And I would love, watching my kids make crazy things, and then smash it and make something new and put things together that you would think didn't belong together. And so the heart of what the IP was something that I felt very strongly about. And I think IP can be a Trojan horse to let you get studios to feel comfortable making something that actually can be about something interesting, because it has the safety of being a recognizable entity that has built-in awareness. But in reality, it's just as random whether it becomes a hit or not as anything else. But if it gives them the security to give you the money to make it, then you can use it as a vessel to shove all the actually interesting ideas in there. And in fact, you're more required to do that because it has this sort of like, oh, this is an existing property, so it's already a big corporate whatever. So you must make it something more about something more interesting and something personal, or else it's going to fail. When you see a movie that's based on IP that you can tell that people didn't love it and didn't care about it, then it feels disposable. But when you see something by someone that are like, oh, this person really loved this thing, and so I guess maybe I should too. I should see what's so cool about it, and that is the stuff that I think ends up working.
So when Chris opened his remarks today, he talked about how Lego wasn't a crass commercial, right? And so truly, we weren't making it for money reasons. We just love Lego, and we had a personal connection to it. So I think you have to have a personal connection and true love, because when we hear these stories, we get rejected all the time. You hear no all the time, or it's not good enough. And what pushes you through is your passion for that underlying material. You call it IP, but it's really for the underlying story, those characters. And as you scale, as you get bigger, Chris and I now have companies and we have other producers that work with us, then it's either you have that passion, but Chris and I, there's only so many things we can personally be involved in, right? So then if you're not, if you can only do so many projects, so it has to be either your employee or your producing partner who is equally passionate about that. So for me, my example is Aladdin. Jonathan Eyrick, who runs my film group, he was passionate about Aladdin. It was his favorite animated movie growing up. So I wanted to support Jonathan, right? So at a certain point, it can't just be my own personal passion project. It can't be Chris's own. We have to support the people that work with us. And if we understand and feel that they're passionate about it, then we can help them make it a success, given the kind of the ups and downs that Chris and I have been through.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. I think that was the end. That was it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Thanks for hanging out while we yammered on.